But today, even more importantly than this new experiment, is maybe the day you've been waiting for all semester, because we've done Venn diagrams with two circles. Now we're going to look at using Venn diagrams in categorical syllogisms, and that means we're going to be looking at three circles. I know. It's exciting. Three circles. And so, whereas initially we divided Venn diagrams, sorry, that little one annoyed me. We divided Venn diagrams into, or used Venn diagrams to divide reality into 4 areas. Now we're dividing reality into 8 areas, right? This area here is the area that is S, but neither P nor M. This is the area that is both S and P, but not M. This is the area that is M. This is the area that is S and M, but not P. This is the area covered by all 3. This is the area that's M and P, but not S. And finally, actually not finally, this is the area that's M, but neither S nor P. And finally, outside, we have the area that's none of the 3 things. Now, of course, in categorical syllogism, we're not going to worry about that last area, but I thought I would point it out because, I don't know, it just needed to be pointed out. So in order to use Venn diagrams for standard form categorical syllogisms, or any for that matter, we're going to draw 3 circles. The bottom left circle, S, is going to be the minor term. So it's the subject of the conclusion. The bottom right circle, P, is the major term, or the predicate of the conclusion. And the top circle is going to be M, the middle term. All right? Now, the idea is that with a valid syllogism, we should be able to draw our Venn diagrams for the premises, and the conclusion will be there. In other words, what we're going to find is if we have to add anything to the premises to make the conclusion, then we're going to have an invalid syllogism. All right, so let me just remind you of a couple of things. When we look at doing this, then, we're going to look at the Venn diagram twice, once for each premise, okay? We're not going to touch it for the conclusion. And when we look at the premise, we're going to consider the 2 circles for the premise that we're considering. All right? So it's either going to be the circles for S and M or the circles for M and P. And I think this guide's going to help us here. So with an A statement, we're shading the Pac-Man. All right? Which Pac-Man? The Pac-Man for the subject of that particular statement that's trying to eat the predicate. For E, we're going to shade the football that lies between the 2 circles for the subject and the predicate. For I, we're going to put an X in the football between the subject and the predicate. And then for O, we're going to put an X in the Pac-Man for the subject that's trying to eat the predicate. Okay. Now remember, now that we have 3 circles, it used to be that the subject was on the left and the predicate was on the right. Now any of those circles could be either one. And so we're going to be looking at them upside down, sideways. It's great fun. And remember, the Pac-Man is always the subject that's trying to eat the predicate, and the football is the football between the 2. Actually, I shouldn't say terms. I should say, yeah, actually terms will work, between the 2 terms. Now, let me show you one other thing. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. Let me just write, just for the heck of it here, S, P, and M. All right, so let's say we're going to say all S are M. All right, we're going to be looking at this S right here. That's the Pac-Man that's trying to eat the M, right? And since all are, we shade the whole thing. All right? Now be careful, because every Pac-Man in football is bisected. Not equally bisected, but is bisected by a line of some sort. When you shade, make sure you shade the entire shape. Sometimes people forget to give the Pac-Man a chin, and they do something like this. All right? That's bad. A Pac-Man without a chin is not really a Pac-Man, because Pac-Men have to be able to eat. If they can't eat, there's something else. All right? So make sure we get that chin in there. All right. The other reason we're concerned about the part that's being bisected, let's say that our next premise is that some M are P. All right. So we're going to be looking at the football between the M and the P. Now notice the football is bisected. And remember, some R means that there exists at least one M that is also a P. But is that M that is also P an S, or is it not an S? We don't know. So what we do is we put the X on the line bisecting the football. Okay? So whenever you have an empty space that's bisected by a line, and you have to put an X, put the X on the line. Now, this isn't always going to happen. Otherwise, we could never do categorical syllogisms. By the way, liners don't count. Okay, I'm trying to remember the sport, because I know tennis, if you hit it on the line, it's in. But I think volleyball, liners are out. I don't know. Whatever sport liners are out, that's what logic belongs to. Because if it's on the line of something, it's not going to count as being valid. Okay. Now, in this particular case, we put the X on the line because we don't know what side of the line to put it on. But suppose we had something else. All right? Suppose we had something like this. We have no S R M for the first premise. Okay? So we're going to shade the football between the S and the M. All right. Then we get the second premise, which is going to be some PRM. All right. We're looking at the football between the P and the M again, but look at this. We know that it can't be in this part here because it's shaded. So if it can't be in the shaded part, it has to be in the other part. So if you're looking at something that you're going to put an X in, and it's already half shaded, put the X in the other half. All right. Does that make sense so far? Okay, so what we do then, initially, is we're going to do both of the premises. Now, there's one more thing that actually has to do with what I just said. We're always going to do the shading. See where it says last? That is wrong. I was being ironic. What's bothering me is I'm going to have to tape this over again now. Always do the shading first. All right? The reason for that is that the shading will tell us where the X goes. If you put the X on the line and then you shade, you could have put the X in the area that was unshaded. So always do shading first. And again, if anything has to be added to make the conclusion, then the argument is invalid. If you look at it and the conclusion is there, the argument is valid. We're going to do some examples. I'll be darned. We have an example here. Let's look at this one. Okay? We've got some dogs are poodles, all dogs are mammals, some mammals are poodles. Now, remember we have to do the shading first. So we're going to skip the first premise and go to the second premise. All dogs are mammals. Okay? D is dogs, M is mammals. And so we're going to shade the Pac-Man for the D that's trying to eat the M. Different people have different styles of shading. This is, I call it sunburst, or the easiest way to shade when you're doing the smartboard. Now, so we have all dogs are mammals. Now we go up to some dogs are poodles. Okay? Now we're looking at this football here between the D and the P. One part is already shaded, so we're going to put the X in the other part. And we're done with the Venn diagram. We're done with the Venn diagram. That's it. All right. Some mammals are poodles. Now, if some mammals are poodles is true, we would find an X in the football between the M and the P. And if we look at the football between the M and the P, and again, liners don't count, but we see an X that's all the way inside. So this is valid. Oh, and then we write the word valid so that the person grading our exam knows what our answer is, and then we're done. Actually, that won't be necessary, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay. Is this making sense?
How come some mammals are poodles? How come there's not an X in that lower part of that football?
Because we just never think about it. We're dealing with the part that's M and P, but has nothing to do with D. The premises are both going to have to do with the middle term. So that's the bottom part of the football is never going to come into the premises. Interestingly enough, the middle term is really the one that's going to work for us on this. Now, let me see if you're going this way. With an X, it just has to be in one part of the football. It doesn't matter which part. With shading, the entire football has to be shaded, or Pac-Man or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, because I guess they can't. It doesn't have to be an X all over because if it's not a dog, then it's not going to fit in there.
Right. Well, the thing is, remember, we're just saying there's at least one member. And if there's one member that's M, D, and P, then it also means there's also one member that's M and P, right? In other words, if the area that's M, D, and P has membership, it means that the area that is both M and P has to have membership as well. Yeah?
Why is it shaded on the right side for all dogs and mammals instead of in the end? Why is it shaded on the east side instead of the other side?
Because we're only looking at these two circles right here. All right? The P just kind of fades away because we're only talking about dogs and mammals right now. All right? And so we're going to shade the Pac-Man for the subject, the D, right here, that's trying to eat the predicate. All right? That's really important. If we put shading into the M part, that's not what the statement's saying. It's not saying anything about no mammals. It's just saying that it's impossible for something to be a dog and not a mammal. All right?
We need to know how to isolate the two.
Right. You only look at the two circles. So for the second premise, because that's the one we did first, we're going to look at the D for dogs and M for mammals. And P just kind of goes in the background. The only reason we'd be concerned about P is because of that line that bisects the shapes. Otherwise, we don't really care about P.
It's always the second one that you go off of?
No. You always go with the one that's going to give you the shading first. All right? The reason I went to the second one here is the first one was an X. So I want to make sure I've got the shading done first. Okay? So if the first one's shading, do the first one first. If the first one's not shading, go to the second one. Other questions? Cool. Now, let's see what's next. Okay, here's another example. Okay, some people are rich people. Some people are Nazis. Some rich people are Nazis. Can someone tell me what's wrong with this? It's not in standard form. Yeah, so I'm going to have to change this right now. I did this purposely to see if people would be able to identify whether something was in standard form or not. Okay. Does that look better? All right. Okay. Some people are Nazis. Some people are rich people. Some rich people are Nazis. All right. Now notice in this case, we don't have any shading to do. So we're going to just do X's. All right. So we start with some people are Nazis, or some P are N. All right? Again, we're looking at the Pac-Man, or I'm sorry, the football between the P and the N, and there's a line through it. Since there's no shading, we have to put the X on the line. All right? Then we've got some people are rich people. So some P are R. Again, football, X goes on the line. And then we're done. And so the conclusion says that we should find an X inside the football between the R and the N. Are we finding it? No. Okay? Invalid. Now, let's say we're not 100% sure of our Venn diagram skills. What do we do? Does anyone have any ideas? We were stressing out because we have to turn this in, and this particular problem means our entire class grade. We want to be sure that we're right, and we're saying it's invalid based on the Venn diagram. What do we do? We could look at the counterexample method. That's a good idea. So we would just find counterexamples for all these things to make it invalid. What's another way that maybe we learned more recently?
There are tables, both that define which ones are and are not valid.
Yeah, we just use the mood and figure. Sure. Either one of those would work, by the way. But let's look at the mood and figure. So what is the mood here? It's kind of easy. Yeah. Figure 3. Okay, if we look, figure 30, it's a new one. If we look,
You're going too fast.
is that what it is?
I think so.
Going too fast for the board, I knew. If we look for figure 3, under I, or I under figure 3, what are we going to find? Nothing. Okay, so it's invalid. Good. Now we got one more. You ready? This is going to be fun. I know. Does it get much more fun than this? Yes. Okay. Anyone knows of striped gorillas? Let's just pretend that there aren't any. It's not important. We're looking for validity, not soundness.
No non-striped zebras.
Well, how would you know? It would be a horse. Is it,
Because the narrator says.
oh, you believe everything a narrator tells you? Okay, I do too. But
You're
yeah,
narrating.
I know. I wouldn't believe me either. Okay, so let's look at this. All zebras are striped animals. Okay, so we got the Pac-Man for the Z that's trying to eat the S. And then we've got no gorillas are striped animals. I have to make a slight modification in this that may help a little bit, or at least will help me. Come on. Will help me immensely. Okay, that's what I meant. Okay, all zebras are striped animals. No gorillas are striped animals. Some gorillas are not zebras. Now, here's an interesting thing. Remember I told you that we can ask about existence if we have a circle that's 3/4 full. All right? Notice at the conclusion, we're looking for an X in the G that's trying to eat the Z. Is everybody with me on this? And notice that the G's that's trying to eat the C is shaded 3 ways. So we can ask ourselves about existence. All right? Now, what does G stand for? Gorillas. Do gorillas exist? Yes, they do exist. All right, so we can put a circle X here. All right, whenever we have a circle that's 3/4 full, we can ask ourselves if it exists. If it does, we can put a circle X. So this would be conditionally valid, and the required condition would be that gorillas or S exists. All right, we could also do it for Z, but that's not really important to us in this particular syllogism. So let's see what we've got here. What's the moon figure here? AEO, figure 2. And if we look on our table, under figure 2, AEO is under conditionally valid forms, required condition S exists. Okay, so again, now we're finding 2 ways of determining if a syllogism is valid. The nice thing is, by the end of today, you'll have 3 different ways. And so even if you're not sure of one particular answer, you'll always have other ways of checking that answer.